Hey guys, this is going to be the first video in a series of more serious video topics, which will hopefully be a bit more informative about things that matter a little bit more than my opinion. Now for this first video, I wanted to do a topic which was very popular currently in the scientific community, which is the idea that our universe might indeed be a holographic projection, at least the universe that we can see. No offense to the blind people, I love you too. So to get a handle on this concept, you have to understand a little bit about string theory. Now I'm not going to get too into the deep parts of string theory, as the knowledge of those isn't necessarily required for you to understand this holographic projection idea. One thing you should be aware of though, regarding string theory, is how it came about as an idea. Before string theory, there is essentially only one main idea as to the composition of the universe, which postulated that everything is made up of particles. So let's get the abridged version of quantum particle theory out of the way first. The origin of this particle theory is rooted in Einstein's theory of relativity. Now he knew that space and time were so closely connected that they were basically interwoven. This gave birth to the idea of space-time mesh, which all objects were said to inhabit. According to Einstein's theory of relativity, all objects exert a gravitational force on one another because they all inhabit this space-time mesh. This theory does a great job at explaining the interactions between heavy objects, such as planets, stars, and star systems, but failed to explain the interactions between extremely small objects, such as individual atoms or the parts that comprise them. This is because on a foundational building block level of the universe, the particles are packed so closely together that gravity is essentially negligible. And this gave birth to the quantum particle theory, which has a different set of math rules to compensate for the lack of gravity. This theory was also lacking in that the particles were so closely packed together that it was said that a proper distance could not be ascertained. String theory came about as a result of trying to solve that problem. In string theory, things are not made up of particles, but rather tiny vibrating strings, and the strings are so small that they have a measurable distance between each other. Certain properties are given off when these strings vibrate, which depends on the type of string that is vibrating. This idea is absolutely integral to a holographically projected universe. But why is that? Well, for our universe to be a holographic projection, there needs to be something that can store data and something that can decode this data and project it into something else. Strings could be the answer to this question. If data is stored in the string and then released when it vibrates, a perception of that vibration could cause a projection. But if we are just interpreting data given off by vibrating strings, where does that really leave us? It's theorized that this three-dimensional universe in which we are perceived to live is not really where we reside. Instead, we're living on a much flatter, two-dimensional universe. Now earlier I mentioned that there are different types of string which, when vibrating, give off different properties. Even though there may be many different types of string, each with their own individual properties, only 3 types of string are needed to understand this holographic projected universe idea. The first type of string is a boson, which transmits a force. The second type of string is a fermion, which is responsible for the property of matter. The third type of string is a graviton, and is responsible for the forces of gravity. With only these 3 types of string, it's easy to imagine a universe in which there are objects which interact with each other through a force of gravity. Kinda sounds familiar, doesn't it? Now that you possess a basic knowledge of string theory, it's almost time to relate that back to universal holographic projection. But first, we need to talk about a little math. Math. But wait, calm down, we're not actually going to do any math, we're just going to talk about it. Now up until this point, everything that we've discussed is just theory and speculation. We can't observe a string because of their incredibly tiny size, so the only way to see if this theory is at least partially somewhat on the right track somewhere is to tell if the strings are influencing an object, which we can't really do, or we can run some mathematical equations to test the theory. And this is how this topic rocketed to mainstream attention. Two independent mathematical equations were done. One of them was calculating the internal energy of a given black hole, and the other was calculating the internal energy of a given two-dimensional universe in which there was no gravity. Significantly, both of these internal energies turned out to be the same number, which is what gives this theory support. So if really this theory turns out to be correct and we're just living life on a two-dimensional universe, perceiving string vibrations to create a three-dimensional universe around us, and different perceptions of those vibrations represent changes in our universe, I really only have one question about this. Warning, the following content is unsafe for a professional environment. I just have one question about all of this. What is actually happening to my body when I get a blowjob? And how can I make it happen more often? Personally, I think this whole projection idea is really cool because it opens the door to a lot of philosophical topics. Although the coolest thing I can think of off the top of my head is death. Like, if we just exist in a two-dimensional universe and are perceiving ourselves and these events to be taking place around us in a three-dimensional universe, does that mean that death is actually a thing, or do we die in this three-dimensional perception of the world and go back to a two-dimensional perception, or do we recreate a universe when we die as a result of different string vibrations? This is definitely a topic that I could talk more about, but if I talk to myself any more today, I'm going to be labeled a schizophrenic, so be sure to jump in on the conversation and give me a real live talking human being to talk to on the internet, of course, and I would be happy to have a discussion on the matter. Of course, if seeing any more things like this would interest you, let me know and I will make more of these. And as always, if you think that I didn't address something important within this, or you'd like to see me address a different topic, get that topic to me and I will consider it. This topic was a request in and of itself, so I definitely do those. And I will see all of you on my computer screen before I go to bed tonight.